New York City Mayor Eric Adams is maintaining his innocence after U.S. Attorney Damian Williams laid out a 5-count indictment against him involving wire fraud, bribery, and illegally soliciting campaign contributions. NTD's Arlene Richards has more.
It's an unfortunate day, and it's a painful day. But inside of all of that, it's a day where we will finally reveal why for 10 months I have gone through this. And I look forward to defending myself and defending the people of this city as I've done throughout my entire professional career.
Williams accuses Adams of involvement in a multi-year scheme beginning in 2014 to commit fraud in exchange for money and property. He alleges that Adams began taking illegal contributions in 2018 at the start of his 2021 campaign.
He agreed to take contributions offered by multiple Turkish businessmen, several of whom he met in Turkey. Adams knew that these wealthy individuals could not legally donate in a U.S. election.
Williams says the mayor flew to different countries, including China, Hungary, and Ghana, through Turkish airlines, and that he paid nominal fees for trips worth tens of thousands of dollars, including upgrades and freebies. According to Williams, Adams was required to publicly disclose these gifts, but he didn't.
The mayor had a duty to disclose these gifts on his annual public disclosure forms so that the public could see who was giving him what. But as we allege, year after year after year, he kept the public in the dark. He told the public he received no gifts, even though he was secretly being showered with them.
The mayor said Wednesday evening that he was targeted for speaking out against the Biden administration.
I always knew that if I stood my ground for all of you, that I would be a target. Despite our pleas, when the federal government did nothing as its broken immigration policies overloaded our shelter system with no relief.
At about 6 a.m. Thursday morning, numerous federal agents arrived at Gracie Mansion, the mayor's residence. They presented Adams with a search warrant and conducted a sweep of the residence and seized the mayor's phone. Adams' attorney, Alex Spiro, criticized the search, saying it was, quote, an effort to create a spectacle. Although the indictment named only Mayor Adams, other officials from his administration are being investigated. In recent weeks, several of them have resigned or announced retirement, including the police commissioner, the school chancellor, a top attorney, and members of the fire department. The mayor says he will not resign. Meanwhile, the investigation is ongoing. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
The bipartisan House task force investigating the attempted assassinations of former President Trump, hearing testimony from local law enforcement officials involved in the security of the July 13th rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. Our Washington correspondent Luis Martinez has more.
The bipartisan task force released never-before-seen footage of the July 13th rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, and questioned local law enforcement on their actions before, during, and after the first attempted assassination against former President Donald Trump.
So we knew there was somebody that was very suspicious. We also knew there was somebody that we weren't able to actually come in contact with, and we kept losing contact with him. We saw him with a rangefinder. We saw him doing things that were not probably in line with what people go to a rally for. At what point did somebody say, we're not sure the area is secure and safe?
We were certainly prepared for the missions that they had given us. There were additional things, obviously, that probably needed covered, but they never asked us to do that. They never tasked us with that.
One of the witnesses, Patrick Sullivan, a former U.S. Secret Service agent, recommended expanding the authority of the Secret Service to prevent security failures like the ones we saw on July 13th.
The failure of most Secret Service personnel in Butler to be informed about the specific threat facing former President Trump stands out. Currently, there is no statutory requirement mandating federal, state, and local agencies must report to the Secret Service information concerning threats against the president or other protectees.
Lawmakers pressed local law enforcement on the lack of a unified command center during the July 13th rally.
Unclear chain of command, technical issues, poor communication, couldn't identify who within Secret Service was final decision maker. no communication in real time, 2 communication centers. Secret Service said they had technical issues with the radios, a problem that was characterized as being common with the agency.
Republicans and Democrats both suggested that the Secret Service was responsible for the lack of coordination.
So Secret Service should have been aware.
Absolutely.
And
They
certainly,
probably were.
had you been in charge, or in your experience, would certainly make local law enforcement aware, hey, we not only have ongoing plots, we just arrested someone in the United States putting down payments to kill President Trump. This is on top of the ongoing domestic threats, correct?
Yes.
You would make your counterparts aware.
This Thursday's hearing was the first the bipartisan task force has held, and their final report will be delivered on December 13th. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
And a flurry of activity in 2 of former President Trump's legal cases. Joining me now to break it all down is Zach Smith, Senior Legal Fellow at the Heritage Foundation. Zach, great to have you in studio.
Great to be back.
Zach, Trump appealed that $450 million fine that he got in that civil fraud case in New York. The New York Court of Appeals judges seem favorable to his case, pointing out that Trump's business partners, quote unquote, never complained. If you could first, just kind of remind us of the basis of that lawsuit.
Yeah, this was the very expansive case that New York Attorney General Letitia James brought against Donald Trump and the Trump Organization, essentially alleging a host of fraudulent activities on their part. Now, what's interesting about that case, as you alluded to, is that typically when there are claims of fraud made, those who are allegedly defrauded raise the alarm about it. And yet that's not what happened in this case. In this case, the banks said they were made whole, essentially said that they would be willing to do business with Donald Trump and the Trump Organization again. And yet, this record-setting fine was levied against Donald Trump and his organizations. And so I think the New York Court of Appeals, which is the intermediate court there in the state of New York, is right to be skeptical about some of the claims brought by Attorney General Letitia James in this case. And it certainly looks like that former Missouri Attorney General John Sauer, who's representing President Trump in this case, made very compelling arguments that some of the judges were very interested in hearing.
And here in Washington, D.C., you had Special Counsel Jack Smith filing a 180-page brief this evening in his election interference case against former President Trump, which is still under seal, so we couldn't get many details out of it. According to Smith, it contains a substantial amount of sensitive material. What do you expect some of that new evidence might be?
Well, we don't really know. We'll have to wait and see. But keep in mind, the entire goal of filing this for Jack Smith and his legal team is to try to skirt the Supreme Court's immunity ruling that they issued last term, where they essentially said that presidents, including Donald Trump, are immune for official acts they take while in office. And so what Jack Smith is trying to say is that many of the acts that President Trump took in the aftermath of the 2020 election, he took in either his personal capacity or in his capacity as a candidate for political office, but not in his official capacity as president. Now, obviously, President Trump and his legal team, they dispute that characterization. I expect they will also file a lengthy filing. I don't know if it'll be 180 pages, which is very long for this type of filing. But I suspect they'll vigorously dispute those charges and make clear that he was acting in his capacity as president.
As if we didn't have enough political legal cases, if you will, to try to follow and wrap our heads around with the 4 criminal against former President Trump, the civil. Now we have New York City's Mayor Eric Adams, who's been indicted today for bribery and fraud charges. We have a clip from the attorney there saying that Adams' alleged crimes go back to 2018. Let's play that.
He agreed to take contributions offered by multiple Turkish businessmen, several of whom he met in Turkey. Adams knew that these wealthy individuals could not legally donate in a U.S. election. Federal law clearly prohibits foreign donations. That's how we protect our elections from foreign influence.
Zach, talk to us about how serious this indictment may be.
Yeah, this is obviously very serious charges. If these charges prove to be true, and Eric Adams is presumed innocent, just like anyone else in our country, but if they prove to be true, these are very serious allegations on par with, frankly, what we saw from former New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez. You know, keep in mind, the Supreme Court has said that in these type of public corruption cases, really only quid pro quo type corruption is what's prohibited. And certainly the allegations, some of the allegations that are made in this indictment seem like they would fall in that category, particularly this speaking indictment, which really lays out in factual detail the allegations against Eric Adams, certainly does not look good for Mayor Adams or others on his team.
Where do you see this case going, and basically what's next? How might this impact the mayor? Will he stay in office? Are there mechanisms in place to have him removed? Where do we see the mayor going from here?
Well, we're certainly hearing calls for him to resign already. Based on what he said, both publicly and privately, it does not look like he intends to do that. He's hired very experienced, very expensive lawyers to defend him in this criminal case. And based on what he's saying right now, he intends to mount a vigorous defense against these charges. So we'll certainly have to wait and see how all of this plays out over the coming weeks and months.
Zach Smith, really appreciate your perspective. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thanks for having me on.
And President Biden meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy at the White House. The two discussed Ukraine's war effort, but not before Biden announced new funding for the war-torn nation. Biden has long been against Ukraine using Western-supplied long-range missiles to strike targets inside of Russia. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley joins us now from the White House. So, Jack, with that said, what came out of President Biden's meeting today? Will Ukraine ultimately be allowed to strike into Russia?
Yes, well, President Biden hasn't given the okay so far, as such attacks could imply a proxy war. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has been pushing for it, and it may have come up during closed-door talks with Biden on Thursday. Even if such a change in policy occurs, it's unclear whether it will be announced publicly. Before the two leaders spoke, Biden announced another $8 billion in military aid to Ukraine.
Russia will not prevail. Ukraine will prevail, and we'll continue to stand by you every step of the way.
Today we have a new support package, $7.9 billion. This will be a great help.
Zelenskyy then held a press conference with Vice President Kamala Harris discussing the war effort.
The United States supports Ukraine not out of charity, but because it is in our strategic interest. We will continue to provide the security assistance Ukraine needs to succeed on the battlefield.
And earlier Thursday, Zelenskyy met with leaders of the Senate, and a day before that, he met with leaders from the House, except for the top House representative, Speaker Mike Johnson. That's because of Zelenskyy's trip to Pennsylvania, where he met with state Democrat officials at an artillery plant. His trip is drawing anger from many Republican members of Congress. They say his U.S. taxpayer-funded flight amounted to a campaign stop. House Speaker Johnson then demanded the Ukrainian ambassador to the U.S. be fired over this. And House Oversight Chairman James Comer opened an investigation into the trip. Steve, back to you.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.